Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It started as an ordinary night shift at a KFC in a small town. Nothing unusual, just the usual late-night crowd looking for their midnight snack. The employee, Mark, was the only one working the kitchen and counter after 10 p.m. The store was mostly quiet, with only a few customers trickling in. But around midnight, something strange began to happen. Mark noticed the deep fryer behaving oddly. It kept bubbling violently, hotter than usual, as if it were boiling over with some unseen force. Shrugging it off, he cleaned it out and continued cooking. But then, the smell in the kitchen changed. It wasn't the usual scent of fried chicken. It was sharp, metallic, and strangely sweet, like burning plastic mixed with something rotting. It made Mark's skin crawl. Customers started to come in, but their faces were pale, almost translucent under the harsh fluorescent lights. One man ordered a bucket of chicken, but when Mark handed it over, the man didn't take it. Instead, he stared at Mark with empty eyes and whispered something so faint, Mark couldn't catch it. The man then vanished right before Mark's eyes, like a trick of light. The clock ticked to 1 a.m. The power flickered, and suddenly the store was plunged into darkness for a few seconds. When the lights returned, Mark was alone, but the smell grew worse, now thick and almost choking. He felt a chill run down his spine as he heard faint scratching noises coming from the storage room. Curiosity mixed with dread, Mark grabbed a flashlight and slowly opened the storage room door. Inside, he found the walls smeared with something dark and sticky. It looked like blood, but it was warm and pulsating as if alive. The chicken boxes in the corner were torn open, but no chicken was inside. Instead, inside each box was a writhing mass of pale fleshy tendrils that seemed to move in rhythm with the flickering lights. Mark stumbled back, dropping his flashlight. As he scrambled to leave, the tendrils slithered out and wrapped around his ankles, cold and crushing. He screamed, but couldn't break free. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was the KFC sign outside, flickering ominously as the store swallowed him whole. The next morning, the manager found the store empty, the lights off, and Mark gone without a trace. All that remained were the smears on the walls and the faint scent of something rotten lingering in the air like a warning. No one ever worked the midnight shift there again.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 2.
Late one night, a young woman named Emily took a job at a 24-hour KFC on the outskirts of a small town. The place was mostly quiet after midnight, with only a few late-night customers stopping by. Emily was told that the night shift was boring but easy, just cleaning, restocking, and handling the occasional drive-through order. What nobody mentioned was the eerie feeling that settled over the restaurant after hours, a feeling that something wasn't quite right. On her second week, Emily was closing alone. Around 2 a.m., she started hearing faint noises coming from the deep fryer area, a low, wet slapping sound, like something moving around in the grease. She dismissed it as pipes or the machinery cooling down. But then she noticed the smell, not the usual fried chicken scent, but something foul and metallic, like blood mixed with something rotten. Curious and a little unsettled, she moved closer to the fryer station. The lights flickered briefly, and she caught a glimpse of something dark and blurry darting in the reflection of the stainless steel. She blinked, and it was gone. Heart racing, she told herself, it was just her imagination. The next night, a regular customer came through the drive-thru at 1:30 a.m. He was pale, sweating, and refused to say much, only ordering the usual bucket of chicken. As he drove off, Emily saw him throw the bucket in the trash outside and walk away quickly, looking terrified. Emily's unease grew. One night, as she was cleaning the kitchen, she found an old, crumpled note stuck behind a fryer machine. It was smeared with what looked like dried blood and read, "They're watching. Don't stay after midnight." She showed it to her manager, but he laughed it off, saying it was probably a prank from some bored employee. But Emily wasn't so sure. After that, strange things happened. Chicken buckets would mysteriously move on their own, the deep fryer would turn on by itself, and cold spots would follow her throughout the restaurant. She even heard faint whispers calling her name from the storage room, a place no one ever went near after hours, One night, determined to find out what was going on, Emily stayed past closing time, waiting for the strange noises. Around 3 a.m., the lights suddenly went out, plunging the entire building into darkness. Panic set in as the emergency lights flickered on, casting long shadows. She heard footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging across the floor, but when she turned, no one was there. Suddenly, a chilling, guttural voice whispered from the kitchen vents, "Leave, now!" The fryer splashed violently, and Emily stumbled back, her breath frozen in terror. She ran toward the exit but found the door locked tight, as if invisible hands were holding it shut. Frantically, she banged on the windows until the morning staff arrived and opened the doors. When the manager came in, everything was normal again, no signs of the strange occurrences or the note. But Emily never worked another night shift at KFC. Weeks later, the restaurant closed temporarily after a health inspection uncovered a hidden, sealed-off basement no one knew about beneath the building. Inside, inspectors found an old, rusted cage and remnants of animal bones mixed with what appeared to be charred human remains. Employees who had worked the night shift before reported feeling watched, hearing screams that vanished before anyone could respond. No one knows who or what had been trapped down there, but many believe the restless spirits haunted the place, trapped in a nightmare that turned a simple fast food restaurant into a house of horrors. To this day, locals avoid that KFC after dark, and if you listen closely, you might hear the faint sound of frying oil bubbling, or something far worse, lurking just beneath the surface.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 3.
Back in 2017, a guy named Marcus picked up a part-time job working the closing shift at a KFC in rural Georgia. It was the kind of town where the main road had only a gas station, a Dollar General, and that one dimly lit KFC tucked at the end of a strip mall. He was a college dropout, trying to piece his life together after things spiraled out of control. The job wasn't great, but it was quiet, especially after 10 p.m., when they locked the doors and cleaned up. The manager, Carla, warned him about staying late alone. Not because of crime or break-ins. She just said weird things had happened in the past. Grease fryers turning on by themselves, doors slamming in the walk-in freezer, that kind of thing. But Marcus thought she was just messing with the new guy. One night, about 3 weeks into the job, Marcus stayed behind after close. Carla had to leave early, and he volunteered to mop the floors and take out the trash. He figured he could get it done in under an hour. Around 11:45 p.m., the place was dead silent, except for the hum of the refrigerators and the occasional creak of old pipes. He was mopping near the kitchen when he heard something hard drop in the back. He paused. It sounded like a heavy bucket had been knocked over. When he rounded the corner, he found the prep counter clean, nothing on the floor. But the walk-in freezer door was wide open. That freezer was old and heavy. It didn't just swing open on its own. He walked over, pulling it shut and locking it. As he turned around, he heard it click back open. Marcus froze. He slowly looked over his shoulder, and the door was wide open again. This time, the light inside flickered like a dying bulb. Thinking maybe the latch was loose, he stepped inside to check. The light buzzed overhead, throwing long, twitching shadows across the hanging bags of frozen chicken. Just as he turned to inspect the latch from the inside, the door slammed shut behind him. The light went out. It was pitch black. He started pounding on the door. "Hey, anyone out there? Hello?" His breath came out in clouds. It was freezing, and the handle wouldn't budge from the inside. His phone was still charging by the register. Panic set in. Then, from somewhere behind the stacked boxes of wings and biscuits, he heard movement. A dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the frozen floor. "Hello?" he called again, his voice cracking. The dragging stopped. Then, something whispered. He swore it said his name. He backed up into the shelves, nearly knocking over a box of corn. The air felt thick now. There was a pressure building in his ears like being underwater. And then he saw it. At the far end of the freezer, crouched beneath a metal shelf, was something pale, bare-skinned, hairless. Its limbs were too long, arms dragging on the floor like a spider. It stared at him with milky, lidless eyes, then began crawling forward, slow, deliberate, scraping its knuckles along the floor, whispering his name again. Marcus screamed and slammed against the door, kicking and pounding with everything he had. The thing was getting closer, whispering faster now, voice higher, more desperate, like it was begging him to stay. Finally, the door gave way. He spilled out onto the kitchen floor, soaked in sweat, gasping. The lights were on. The air felt warm, but the door behind him was still wide open, and the freezer was empty. There were no boxes, no shelves, no food. It was as if it had never been stocked. He quit the next day, didn't even come back for his last check. But before he left, he asked Carla about what really happened there. She didn't say much, just told him that back in 1998, one of the night workers got locked in the freezer during a winter storm. Power was out for hours. By the time anyone found him, his body was frozen solid, curled up in the corner. They say the look on his face was pure terror. KFC remodeled that location 5 years ago, tore down the walk-in and built a new one. But workers still say they hear whispers late at night, especially if they're the last one there. And sometimes when they open the freezer door, it's already open.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 4.
The KFC was closing late that night, the kind of slow dragging into a long shift that made the fluorescent lights buzz in your head and shadows stretch oddly across the empty tables. Marcus, a new night shift worker, was alone behind the counter. The last customers had left hours ago, and the only sounds were the hum of the fryer and the distant rattling of the street outside. Around 2 a.m., just as Marcus was wiping down the last tray, the door chimed softly. He looked up, surprised. He thought the restaurant was closed. A man stepped in, pale and disheveled, eyes darting like he'd been running. He wore a heavy coat, even though the night was warm, and he smelled faintly of damp earth. "Can I get a bucket?" the man asked, voice hoarse. Marcus hesitated but nodded. He started to prepare the order, glancing nervously toward the door. The man stayed close to the counter, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact. Something about him was off. Too quiet, too tense. Marcus felt a prickling unease crawl down his spine. As he handed over the bucket, the man's hands trembled. "Thanks," he muttered, backing slowly toward the exit. Marcus thought the encounter was over, but then the man paused, turned sharply, and whispered, "You have to listen. Don't open the back door tonight. Just don't." Marcus blinked, confused. "What? Why?" The man's eyes darkened, and he stepped closer, voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "They come through the back. I barely got out. You don't want to see what's back there." Before Marcus could ask more, the man shoved the bucket at him and fled into the night. The door chimed again, and Marcus was left staring at the empty street, heart pounding. Curiosity got the better of him. He went to the back door, usually locked tight during closing hours. Tonight it was slightly ajar, a sliver of cold air leaking in. He reached out to shut it when a faint sound froze him. A dragging noise, slow and wet, coming from the alley beyond. Marcus's breath caught. He peeked outside, and his flashlight caught something that made his blood run cold. Faint, pale footprints leading into the darkness, slick and glistening like they'd been made by something not entirely human. He slammed the door shut and locked it, backing away. The fryer hissed, the lights flickered, and then the power cut. The whole restaurant plunged into darkness, except for the faint glow of the street lamp outside. And then, from the back came a slow, deliberate scratching, like nails dragged across metal. Something was trying to get in. Marcus ran to the front, grabbing his phone, but there was no signal. The scratching grew louder, closer, until he could swear something was breathing just beyond the door. He didn't wait for more. He bolted out through the front door, sprinting into the night without looking back. The next day, the manager found the back door wide open, muddy footprints trailing in and out like a warning. Marcus never came back, and the night crew insists now that no one should ever open the back door after hours. Some say if you listen closely, near the alley behind that KFC, you can still hear the scraping nails and the faint, desperate whispers of the man who warned them to run.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 5.
The night shift at KFC was supposed to be easy. Just another routine evening job for Alex, a college student trying to make ends meet. The restaurant was located on the edge of town, right where the streetlights started to flicker and the roads got emptier. The place was old, with worn-out tiles and a faint smell of grease that clung to everything. But the pay was decent, and the managers were hands-off, so Alex didn't mind. One night around midnight, everything changed. The restaurant was nearly empty, just the usual quiet hum of the fryers and the occasional creak from the building settling. Alex was wiping down the tables when the lights suddenly flickered, then went completely out. The emergency lights kicked in, casting long shadows that seemed to creep along the walls. Alex grabbed the flashlight from under the counter and started to check the fuse box. As he moved through the dimly lit kitchen, he heard something, a soft scraping noise, like claws dragging across the linoleum. He froze, heart pounding, thinking it was just a rat or maybe the vent rattling. But then, from the corner of the kitchen near the walk-in freezer, a whisper reached his ears. It was unintelligible at first, but slowly it formed into words. "Don't stay. Don't look." Alex's skin crawled, but he forced himself to move toward the freezer door. His flashlight beam caught something moving inside, a pale hand pressed against the frosted glass. He slammed the door shut, backing away quickly, and tried to call the manager on his phone. No signal. The power was out, the phone's dead, and the place felt suddenly oppressive. Suddenly, the deep fryer started boiling violently on its own, splashing hot oil onto the floor with no one near it. The temperature dropped sharply, breath visible in the cold air. Alex's flashlight flickered, then died, plunging him into darkness. He felt it before he saw it. A figure standing just behind the counter, too tall and thin to be human, with eyes reflecting the flashlight's last dying glow. It whispered again, a voice like rotting meat and rusted chains. "Leave while you can." Alex ran, bursting out the back door into the freezing night. When he looked back, the KFC stood quiet and normal, the lights flickering back on as if nothing had happened. The next morning, when the manager arrived, Alex told him what he'd experienced. The manager just laughed and said, "You're probably just stressed, but you're not the first. Some say the place was built on an old burial ground and strange things happen after dark." Alex quit that night. But weeks later, he heard from a friend that the night shift worker after him disappeared without a trace. Security cameras showed him entering the kitchen, then the feed cut out abruptly. No one ever found him. The KFC still runs, and some nights, if you stand near the walk-in freezer, you can hear that same whisper carried by the cold air. "Don't stay. Don't look."